Well, good day viewers. Today we have an '07 Toyota Tundra, and it was in here earlier in the week with a problem with the ABS and traction control lights on, and he's scanned it with a code reader of some kind and had a transmission range sensor implausibility code. It's not acting up today, of course, and then we looked at it a couple days ago on the hoist, and I'll show you the code readings then. So when I was here on March the 9th, it had these C1201, C1207 fault and park neutral range switch in the ABS. Has an immobilizer code in history. I think it might have a car starter in it. But that's all that was in it at that time. So we're going to see if there's if anything has returned. Oh, I got to put the scanner in the truck. So we're going to do a code scan again this morning and see if any of the codes that we had on the 9th came back. He hasn't mentioned to me whether the lights came back on or not. It was in the ABS system where the codes were, so nothing's came back by the looks of it. I think he might have some tire pressure sensor codes. No, it looks like a clean bill of health so far. So there's the transmission range sensor right there, and I had taken this connector off the other day and inspected the terminals, wiggled the wires while monitoring the range switches, and everything was good at that time. So we're going to call this part, and we ordered it from the dealer because it was actually cheaper from the dealer and faster to get. Now this nut has to come off, and it's pretty rusty, so I'm going to get some penetrating fluid in here and probably use some heat on it as well. So I've sprayed penetrating fluid on the end of the nut, so I'm going to use this magnetic resonance heater to heat that nut up. The benefit of this is an open flame, and it concentrates the heat right on the nut. It's a 12mm nut. Wow, that's tight. Let's reheat it. Put some more penetrating fluid on it. And reheat it again. Certainly don't want to break that nut off. I did a tranny service on one of these a few months ago, and I swore I'd never do another one. Almost every one of these bolts broke off in the transmission when I went to take the pan off. That's tight. Let's put some more penetrating fluid on it. is that being so... Let's heat it again. Wow, it's fighting me this morning. Just one nut, take one nut off, it says. If I yard on that, it's going to bust off that stud. More penetrating fluid. I'm sure this problem doesn't happen in California. Now, if you just reefed on that and snapped that off, that would be catastrophic. Because then you'd need a new shift shaft, which means pulling the valve body off. That wrench is hot. Well, let's put some more penetrating fluid on it. Well, now what do we have to do? Well, I'm going to clean this up. looks like there's a nut on the end of this. Looks like a 22 mil nut. Let's have a look at the new part. So here's the new part number. And this is what it looks like. So there is a nut in there, and it looks like it's a compression tapered thread, so that when you tighten this nut up, it squeezes it on the shaft. So I'm not worried about breaking this nut because that's part of the switch. In fact, if it breaks, it's probably a good thing. Let's take it off. Well, there's the nut off, and there's like a lock washer behind it. Now I put the nut on part way and I tried to pry the switch off and it's not coming off, so I suspect it's corroded right on the shaft. This is aluminum and this is steel, the shaft. Thank God I didn't break that. Well, I'm going to try working at it, see if I can spread this apart. I've already put the nut on once and then pried against the case here, and it just pulled the nut off the end of the aluminum. So there's the outside cover broken off of the switch, and this solid aluminum piece here is stuck on the shaft. I'm going to try and see if I can heat that up with the magnetic heater a bit. Maybe that'll help the penetrating fluid wick in there. So this is not cooperating. I'm afraid to get in here with too much heat because it'll probably damage the seal in the transmission. But that aluminum piece is corroded right onto this steel shaft. Ideally, it'd be nice if I could get a puller in here, but there's not enough room. I don't have any small 2-jaw puller like that. I tried putting a pair of vice grips on the end of it. A little Dremel tool to cut the aluminum. Fortunately, it's aluminum on steel and not steel on steel. So there's the old switch off. This aluminum piece was corroded onto the shaft. I managed to heat it up with a propane torch. The magnetic resonance heater doesn't work on aluminum. It works on the steel shaft, but not on aluminum. But looking at the inside of the switch, you can see that moisture has gotten in there and it's likely compromised the connections and was setting that code. So now we got to clean up this shaft with some emery cloth so that the new switch slides on. Put some never seeds on there in case it ever has to come off again. So to adjust this thing, you put the transmission shift shaft in neutral, and that groove lines up with the neutral basic line. Loosen that bolt and adjust it accordingly. So I've got it set in the truck. I'm going to reconnect it, and we're going to confirm the electrical portion of it. It doesn't say anything about tightening this nut. Install a new lock washer, new lock nut. Hold the switch in the position and tighten the bolt. Bend the tabs on the lock washer. Alright, well, we're going to confirm it works. So there's the new part installed. Put some dielectric grease in the seal on the connector. And gonna start it, make sure it works. Check the data parameters on the scan tool. So it seems to work fine. It starts in neutral and park, and backup lights work correctly. So I'm just I've got custom data list of transmission data showing the drive switch, neutral switch, reverse switch, park switch, and then the park neutral position. I'm not sure what's CTP, but I'm going to graph that one anyways as I move the shifter through the ranges. So there's reverse, neutral, drive, that's manual downshift, manual upshift, back to drive, neutral, reverse, park. pause this for a second. I couldn't see the status of that CTP switch, if it changed at all. I'm not sure what that is. Oh well. But it went through the gears properly, it shifted fine. No warning lights on, so we're going to call this one fixed. Give it back to the customer. Thanks for watching.